Hello and welcome to the Lee Business School Undergraduate Advising for Transfer Students PowerPoint, specifically for the 8th Annual UNLV and CSN Advising Partnership event. Today I'm going to go through some information about our program, and some of it's older, but for new advisors it'd be good to go over again. And some of it is there's a couple new things. So hopefully you'll get some good information out of this. And of course, if ever you have any other questions, just let us know. So majors and degrees that we offer, we do offer two types of degrees. We offer a BSBA, which is a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and we offer a BA, which is a Bachelor of Arts. There is a difference between the two degrees. So generally under the BSBA, we offer all these different areas of concentration. So if a student says, I want a business degree, this is normally what they're referring to. And I'll show you some degree sheets here in just a minute, but essentially this degree includes the business core section of 27 credits. So that requires the student to take a course in finance, marketing management, 2IS courses, the capstone, etc. With the BA degree, we only offer it in economics. And this is a better degree program for students who may want to be doing pre-law or even pre-med, or they're going to do a dual degree. So this degree has 24 credits of economics required, but it has a very large elective portion, so general electives. So essentially, if a student is coming from another school, let's say they already got a degree, and they want another degree in economics, this would be the better way to go. They would be able to use more of those courses from their transfer school. If they had started in, a different major here at UNLV, let's say they went pretty far into computer science and now they want to do economics. And let's say they have a whole bunch of courses from computer science, then this would be the better way to go because they could use those courses. So it really just depends on the student. Most of the time, you all will be advising students for the BSBA. And that's where we're going to talk about the pre-major courses that are required for that degree program. We do give some information to students about the BA degree when they come over for the transfer group session, but it's very few and far between that end up switching to that degree program. So changes in the curriculum, these have been around for a little bit, but again, I wanted to kind of just review them to make sure. So our information management degree, which used to be information management, is now information systems. Generally, you guys probably won't see much of this on your end. We see it more on our end because we have students that are still on the old catalog years that have information management. But essentially, it's all been switched to information systems. So if you do have a student that's interested, let's say, with the previous degrees that we offer, and they say, well, I want to do information management, you could always let them know it's information systems. It really doesn't make that big a difference. All the requirements are still the same. Starting in fall of 2021, students are no longer able to use CS 115 for our IS 101 requirement. This is a change that was implemented based off of the information that students get in the IS 101 course. So it's a departmental decision. We do have students that come in with CS 115 because let's say they took it a few years ago and they've been at CSN for a while, or from another school. Unfortunately, they are not able to use that course any longer. We do offer credit by exam for IS 101. So students feel that they're proficient enough in IS 101, specifically in Excel. And when we say Excel, we mean up to pivot tables. So beyond just adding and subtracting columns and things like that, then they can do the credit by exam. And if they pass the credit by exam, we will use that for their IS 101. Additionally, starting in the catalog year 1920 to now, students used to be required to take English 407A and COM 102. That has now been changed to Business 321. So obviously they can't take that at CSN, right? So if a student, let's say they started a while back and they took the COM 102 at CSN, and now they're coming over on the new catalog year. Unfortunately, the COM 102 will just be a general elective, and they will still have to take the Business 321. So essentially, we don't see a lot of this too much anymore. But we do have students, like I said, that have been at CSN for a little bit, and they've already taken it, and then they come over here and realize they can't use it. So it might be good just to let students know that if they've already taken it, just be prepared that it's going to come over as an elective. And usually they need a couple of electives anyway. So as long as they haven't taken a bunch of other extra courses, it's usually fine to be used as a general elective. Okay, so our degree worksheets have changed a little bit. Everything that we do now is electronic. So these are all from the electronic files that we have for students. We have formatted it so that it is a one-page document. So now when it's printed out, it is all on one page, which is very, very nice. And I'm just going to kind of break that down with you guys here today. So essentially, if a student's going through CSN, they're going to be taking their general education and their pre-majors. So again, as I mentioned before, between the BSBA and the BA degree, this is the BSBA degree. And we normally just focus on this one. So if you have a student that's wanting to be a business major, this is more than likely what they're going to follow. They're going to follow these general education requirements and these pre-major courses. So first, the catalog year we have located at the top. Anybody coming in up to summer of 23 will be on the 22-23 catalog. And then general education courses we have listed on the left-hand side here in purple. I have included our purple handout in the handout section. This is a handout that we give to students, essentially is a breakdown of what's in the catalog. So what the catalog requires or what the catalog allows for general education sections, we've listed on this handout. So if a student is interested in what can they do for fine arts, what can they do for sciences, it's listed on that handout. This should be pretty familiar, not too much of a difference here as far as general education requirements. We do require students to have Math 124 or higher. So it'd be great if they came in with Math 124 with a C or better, or at least come in being able to take Math 124. So they've taken the prerequisite, or now, like say, they've taken the co-rec math and they've passed the co-rec math with a C or better. They will need to meet that requirement to be able to be in a business major and a business pre-major. So if they have not passed Math 124 with a C or better, they will essentially have to finish that before we move them into business pre. As you know, we do require the first year and second year seminar. If the students transfer over with 30 credits or more, the first year seminar is waived. And if they come over with 60 credits or more, then the second year seminar is waived. So I mentioned pre-major business courses a few times. These are really the essential. So what we do see a lot is with CSN students is they'll come over and they'll have all their gen ed done. They'll have all their pre-majors done except for one. Usually it's math. Sometimes it's English 102. Sometimes it might be an econ or an IS course. And then they're stuck because they don't have any additional courses they can take because they have to have all of these completed to move from business pre into a business major and start taking our upper division courses. So unfortunately, it puts them in kind of a bit of a pickle of a situation. We do have a process of appeal that we offer students. We don't like to have to do that a lot because it is kind of going against the requirements for the major, but in certain instances, we will consider that. So it's really important that when students come over that they actually have these courses completed or that they're not missing just one. If they still have a lot of general education courses, that's not going to be that big a deal because they do need 55 credits to move into a major anyway. But if they've essentially finished all this and most of these, and let's say they have less than 4 to take, they're not going to end up with a full schedule here at UNLV. So these are kind of more the priority. We make sure that they take as many of these as they can each semester, and then fill it in with the general education requirements. So this is the Business 321 class. This is the one that's replaced the English 407A and the COM 102. This course is business communications and can only be taken at UNLV. There are some four-year schools that have a course similar that's transferred in, but it's fairly rare. So students will generally take this course once they come to UNLV. This does require COM 101 and English 102 to be completed with a C or better before they're able to enroll in this class. So if a student comes over from CSN and has these two courses completed, and let's say they have one general education and two pre-major courses left, they can take their one general education course, their two pre-major courses, and their Business 321. This is the only upper division class students can take without being fully admitted into a business major. And then we have our upper division business core. So this section is the difference that I mentioned between the BSBA and the BA degree. The BSBA requires these 27 credits of business courses, where the BA does not require this. These they will start when they come in and switch to a business major. They will be taking these along with their major courses. Now, CSN does offer a management and marketing principles of management, principles of marketing that do come over as lower division general electives. We have a lot of students ask if there's a way to use those courses. We cannot use those courses because they are not upper division and they're not from an AACSB institution. So what we normally do tell students is that they can CLEP for those two classes. The trouble we run into is, however, if they've finished all of their general education courses and all their pre-majors at CSN, they're going to need some additional UNLV credits to meet their 4-year rule, and we'll go over that a little later. If they CLEP does not count as 4-year credit. It counts as 2-year credit. So it actually puts them in a little bit more of a hole where they would have to take 2 additional courses here at UNLV, general electives, to meet that 50% rule. We basically give the student that option. If they want to retake a course at an upper level that they feel like they've already taken, they can do that. Or if they do the CLEP option, that we let them know that they will have to still make up those credits somehow in general electives. And then the major area is 24 credits. This will be what major that they have chosen. So these would be like all accounting, all finance, so forth and so on. The only course that is offered, well, actually only 2 courses that are offered at CSN that a student can use towards their major is IS 210, if they're going to be doing information systems, and Economics 262, if they're going to be doing economics. Beyond that, these are all 300 and 400 level and need to be taken at UNLV. And then their general electives. So a lot of times if we have students that come over with more than 60 credits at CSN or around 60 credits, we'll put a couple of CSN courses here and then let them know here they need 2 more from UNLV to meet that 50% rule. If they still have enough here at UNLV to take and still meet that 50%, then we'll fill this up with all CSN courses if they have extra. Otherwise, they do need to get to the 120 to graduate, but they also need to do 50% of their credits from a 4-year school. So we make sure that we let them know that there's actually 2 different requirements they have to meet with those general electives. So I mentioned minimum C grade about the math, but I want to make sure that you guys are aware too that we require all the pre-major courses to also be a minimum C grade. Now, this can be a little confusing for students because if they take Accounting 201 at CSN and they get a D, essentially that's passing. And so maybe they've moved on to Accounting 202 or they're transferring over with the D thinking that that's going to apply. It would be very helpful and very important for the student to understand that these courses need to all be C's or better for us to be able to use those courses. In addition, these top business courses here have a 3 attempt rule. And we'll go over that again here in a little bit, but essentially they only have 3 times to take these courses. and get a C or better to still be eligible for a business degree. This means if they come over with, let's say, an F, a D, and a C minus in Econ 102, they're already not eligible to do the business major. Again, we do have an appeal process for this that they can try to see if they can get approved for. But again, it is good to let them know that if they are taking one of these classes for the third attempt and they're not going to get that C, they're better dropping the class. The only times drops in audits will affect them if they're going to be an accounting major. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But if they drop or withdraw from a course, we don't count that as an attempt. These courses here also require a C or better. However, these are not business courses, so we cannot put the 3 attempts rule on these courses. So they could take COM 101, English 102, and their upper level math more than 4 times to get the C or better, but they do still require a C or better. And then anything else that is a business course requires a C or better, but more than likely they'll be doing these with us, and we let them know about that. As I mentioned prior, the Math 124 does require a C or better. They do need that to move on to the next math. Ideally, we advise students that if they take the 124, that they can move into the 132. If a student wants to take the 126, 127 route, that's fine too. But we found that students that take algebra-based math usually do better in the finite course than in pre-calc 2. So either way they want to do that. If they come in with one of these upper division math courses, they don't need to take the 124. We would just apply that as their requirement for business and for UNLV. And additionally, if they have Math 126 and Math 124, they only get credit for one of the 2. So I have seen that a couple of times. It's not that often, but I do see students that come in that have taken 124 and 126 and wonder where those 3 credits went. So we do have to explain to them that they can't get credit for both. And then at that point, they have the option to go into 132 or 127. So I did mention the 3-time maximum attempt. And again, this is just kind of reiterating that. So we only count grades, A through F, as attempts. We don't count drops and audits, as I mentioned. So if a student is on their 3rd attempt of one of the pre-major courses and they don't think they're going to pull that C out on the 3rd attempt, they're better to drop or audit the course. However, if they are an accounting major, they do count drops and audits, but only on the upper division courses. So if a student is taking accounting 201 or 202, and let's say they've taken the course 2 times, and on that 3rd time, they're not going to pull out that C. If they drop or audit it, that won't count against them. They do still have that extra time to take accounting 201 and 202. Only when they get here and they start taking accounting courses, they will start counting drops and audits. Ideally, when I see students that come over from CSN, if they're not getting A's and B's in accounting 201 and 202 right off the bat, they're generally going to struggle in the upper division accounting courses. So you may want to have a conversation with that student if they're on like their 3rd attempt trying to pass accounting 201 and 202, that they may want to keep their options open. We also have an accounting competency exam that they have to take based off of 201 and 202 before they go into the accounting major, which is mainly based off financial accounting, but there is some managerial in there as well. And so they have to pass that in addition to applying to the major. So if you see them struggling in the accounting, chances are they're probably going to have a really difficult time continuing on with that major. So I mentioned the purple sheet prior. This is basically what the sheet looks like. And we've just broken down all the courses that students can take for general education requirements. And this is basically what is in the catalog. So we've just put it into a really handy handout, if you will, for students. And you'll notice on here that we do list some of the courses, like list them all out as options. And some of them, we just give them the websites. So like for the 2nd year seminar, they can go onto the website and look at the courses that are required. Multicultural and international, they can look at that as well. Something to keep in mind also is they will satisfy their international with us automatically because they're going to be doing business 496 or 498, which is our capstone course. So they don't actually have to come over with a separate international course. Now, if they change majors, they change colleges, they go into a different college, then yeah, they may have to go back and make up that international requirement. For multicultural, any student that's doing a degree other than accounting will meet their multicultural requirement with us with Business Law 302. And again, these two rules apply only to those doing the BSBA degree, because the BA degree does not require those two courses. So if they're coming over for a regular business degree and it's not accounting, they're going to double dip their multicultural and international once they get into upper division courses. So if they're looking at, let's say they have most of their courses ready to go, but they're missing a multicultural, they don't necessarily have to worry about taking that before they transfer over. And again, this is just an example where we tell students, if you're looking for humanities, you'll want to look at this section, read what options there are, and then you're going to be searching for those classes based off of the different subject matter, as opposed to just searching humanities class. Okay, so you're all pretty familiar probably with placement already. We do make sure we go over this with students as well. We use ACT and SAT scores for 2 years from the time taken. We have ALEX that's valid for 1 year from the time taken. And then we also have our math department's placement test. We don't normally recommend the math department's placement test for students, as it is considerably more difficult and the options of when and how to take it are more limited. So we generally will have students either take the ALEX or we'll use their ACT and SAT placements. Most of the time what I see is students that waited too long to take math. So it's been past 2 years, they're still at CSN, but they haven't done any placement, and then they come over here and we're basically telling them to do math placement. It seems more often than not that keeps happening. So we'd like to see students either come over already with math or be prepared to take the ALEX placement before they get here, or right when they get here, the semester they get here, so that they can register for math for that semester. We are a math-based major, so we do push students towards taking math prior to English. So if a student comes over to us and is missing math and English 102, or math and English 101 and 102, we're going to push them more towards the math to get that done. And again, as I mentioned, if they have the co-rec math with a C or better, that works just fine to go into the next math, same as 124 to go into the next math, and then the 126 to go into 127 or the 132. So I mentioned a couple of times that they have to apply to their major. This is the form that we use for them to apply. So when they first come in, they're all business pre, which can be a little confusing because they'll come in thinking that, they picked, let's say, finance as a major, and they assume that when they get here, they're going to be finance. But they actually have to go through this process first. When we get students from CSN, there are many times, more often than not, that they have all these requirements completed and they are asked to apply to the major during their advising group session. And so we can get those processed and get them into their major so they can start registering for the upper division classes for that semester. However, we do also see students that, like I said, are missing maybe one pre-major course or missing one of the 3 requirements. So the 3 requirements that we have to apply to the majors, they have to have 55 credits completed or in progress. Most of the time, if they're coming over from CSN, they've done an associate's degree or they're close to doing an associate's degree, they're going to already have that credit count. They need to have every single course completed with a C or better. So as I mentioned before, we will either see students that come over that are missing a course or they're in progress with courses. That happens a lot. And we essentially have to explain to the student that they have to have grades posted for those courses on their transcripts prior to applying to the major. We will accept an unofficial CSN transcript that they can turn in with their application to the major that has their grades, because we understand it does take time to get that transcript sent over to UNLV and posted. So we do offer them that as an option. but those grades actually have to be posted. So we do have some students that come over with in progress, and they're waiting for those grades before they can move on. As I mentioned, these all need to be completed with a C or better. They all need to be completed. So if they're missing any of these classes, they cannot apply to the major. Another unfortunate thing we see often is them coming over with a transfer GPA that's below a 275. So they are required to have a 275 GPA to apply to the major. What this means is if they're coming over from CSN and they don't have a 275 or higher, we are obligated then at that point to have them establish a UNLV GPA, earn a 275 or higher, and then apply to the major. That requires them to take at minimum 12 credits, and that's 12 academic credits. So they can't take like a physical education course or something like that. So if we have a student, let's say from CSN that's come over, they've met all these requirements, they've taken all their gen eds, they have nothing else left to take, they are in a really big bind, because if they don't have that 275, they're going to have to take 4 classes that may be unrelated to the degree program. We do offer things like maybe they might want to do a minor in a different college. They cannot do a business minor at that point, but they could do a minor, say, in communications or computers or whatever. But it does put them in a bind. So that's a good thing for them to understand, that they really should be striving for that 275 GPA even at CSN. Now, if they're coming over here and they still have classes left to take, and they're going to be taking those at UNLV, then obviously we're going to be looking at their UNLV GPA when they apply and no longer looking at their transfer GPA. But we do have a lot of students that are surprised by that when they come over, not realizing that their transfer GPA is not high enough to move on into the major. So they will complete this form if they meet all the requirements, and then in 5 to 10 business days, their major will be switched from business pre into the major of their choice. And at that point, then they can start adding the upper division courses. So this is essentially a slide that we show students that explain that if they, let's say they were a UNLV student and they transferred over to CSN and now they're coming back, that whatever GPA they left at UNLV is still the GPA that we have to use, which is really unfortunate, but that's kind of just how it works. So if they have a 2.3 GPA at UNLV, they went to CSN, they did great, now they have a 3.8. Unfortunately, they still have to fix their UNLV GPA before they can apply to the major. There are a few ways that they can do that. We will generally have the student meet with us to talk about possible grade repeats. If it's been 3 years or longer since they've been here, they can do what's called academic renewal and ask to have a semester removed from their transcript. We do encourage students to speak with their advisor before they do that as well. That way we can calculate which semester is going to be the best option. That's basically what's going to make the biggest effect on their GPA. So I talked about accounting and I talked about the minimum C grade in pre-major courses. The other trick with accounting is the students actually have to have a B minus or better in accounting 201 and 202 to be eligible for the accounting major. As I mentioned before, if we see students that are not pulling out an A or a B, at minimum B minus, in these 2 classes, they're going to have difficulty in the further accounting courses as it is. But let's say if they come over with C's in these 2 classes and they decide they want to be accounting, they will have to retake these 2 classes for B minus or better. They can do that at CSN or here, doesn't matter, but they will need to have that B minus or better before they're allowed to move into accounting courses. So if you have a student you know wants to be an accounting major, there's a lot of hoops and things that they have to go through to do this. So one, I would encourage them to make sure they're getting B minuses or better in the 201, 202. Let them know that they're going to need to take a comprehensive examination on 201 and 202 when they get here before they can move into upper division accounting courses. And that if they're struggling in 201 and 202, they may want to reconsider the major. I have had students that have struggled in 201, 202 and still have gone on, but they generally will get C's in the upper division, which is not competitive enough in the accounting field to be able to get a good paying or high paying position. So they can pass the degree, but it may put them at a disadvantage once they've graduated. So as I mentioned, those students that want to get into accounting, they need to first get accepted to the major, have that B- in both accounting 201 and 202, have passed the competency exam, and applied to the major, which was the gray sheet I showed a few slides prior. Feel free to send the student to this web link here. This is the web link on the accounting website, and it will show them, it'll break down a little bit what's on the competency exam, and it'll also show them what times and days that we're offering the competency exam. However, we normally don't push students to take this until they're with UNLV, and it only lasts for 2 semesters. So if a student does not plan to be taking those upper division accounting courses within the next 2 semesters, we advise them to actually wait to take the exam, because they're just going to have to retake it anyway. So we usually deal more with this once they get here, but it is good for them to understand that they will have a competency exam once they come over to move on into accounting. So we talked about maximum attempts. As I mentioned, there is a 3 times attempt. Actually, I think this is a double slide. I apologize for that. And again, with accounting, as I mentioned, they only do the upper division for drops and audits. So I apologize. That looks like that's a repeated slide. We're very passionate about the 3-time attempt. Okay, so I mentioned before 50% of your degree must come from a 4-year institution. So this is a transfer handout that we give students that have basically transfer rules and policies for UNLV. But a lot of students don't realize when they come over from CSN that they may have to take 1 or 2 courses in addition to their required courses because they've brought over too many credits. So the degree is 120 credits. So if they've brought anything over 60 credits that are degree applicable credits, essentially they're probably going to have to take 1 or 2 classes once they get over here for general electives to meet that rule. I would say the majority of students we have that have completed an associate's degree or have completed most of their credits at CSN will usually be required to take extra courses to meet this rule. They do seem a little blindsided by this. So mentioning this early on might be good. We certainly don't want to discourage students from getting an associate's degree. So if that's still something that they want to do, they should definitely do that. Another option is if they want to save a couple courses and take them here and transfer them back and then get their associates that way, they can avoid having to take those 2 extra classes. But if they have completed all their gen ed, all their pre-majors, and all they have left to do is their Business 321, their Business Core, and their major courses, that only adds up to 54 credits. So automatically, they're going to have to take an extra 2 classes to meet that requirement. We also require 50% of their business courses be from UNLV. This doesn't really affect them that much unless they're coming from a 4-year institution that also had an accredited AACSB business program. Then they may have taken some upper division business courses there, and then we may have to talk with them about how many they can use. We don't see this that often, but it is just something we make sure that they're aware of. And 50% of all their major courses need to be taken at UNLV as well. Again, we don't see that often, but that is a rule that we have here as well. I'd say the first one is the one that's going to affect most of the students coming from CSN to UNLV. So for our undergraduate advising, we have full-time professional advisors. Right now, we have the following advisors that are listed here on the slide, and we do divide up by the student's last name. We don't go by major. So this way, once we've established a relationship with a student, they change their major, they don't have to go to a different advisor. They're still going to stay with the advisor that they have. So we advise for every business degree. Our advisor for A through B, X through Z is in training. She should be up and running by middle of October. So we're very excited about that. And then we'll have a full crew. We do have Jason Kantrowitz, and he sees students with the last name C through F. Myself, Mary Martin, I see students with the last name G through K. Tashana Stewart sees L through O. Dana Angioni is P, Q, and V. John Starkey is R through W. And Stephen Sumner is W. Stephen Sumner is also our first year student advisor, so he also has all of the incoming freshmen from UNLV. So the ones that you guys don't see that start here, he also advises them for the first year. This is our email, so at any time if you have any questions, you can always email the LBS Advising. You can also email us individually, and we'll get back to you with any questions that you might have. So we did put this in here. We do have a lot of students wondering about paying for school and career services and things like that. So these are some really good websites for students to have. They can start looking into these prior to coming over, as far as getting their degree paid for. And we show them these again when they come over as transfer students, and have them kind of take a picture of this slide and have those resources available. But this is something that we wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of as well. We also have our own career and professional development office that's attached to academic advising. So when a student comes over to UNLV, we have their own separate career office that they can go to for resumes, interview workshops, internships, anything that has to do with getting into the field of any field that they're interested in. It's primarily focused just for our business students. So UNLV has their main career services for all UNLV students, and then we have one specifically for our business majors. So I hope that covered most, if not all, of your questions. By all means, if you have any additional questions, please contact us and let us know. And I thank you so much for your advising there and helping our students come over here. And we really appreciate all the work that you guys do there. And if there's anything that we can help with or answer questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.